that said, 85% of US recruiters and hiring managers say that a candidate that has a poor online reputation, that they take a look at that with, 85% of US hiring managers and recruiters say that they go to they look at a candidate's online reputation to make a decision as to whether or not they want to hire that person or not. And that's a huge statistic, right? That proves that candidates and companies, right? They're using the internet more to create a understanding of who they are in the market, so then they can also get hired and attract talent.
Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit, I think that's good on kind of the importance of personal brand. How do I think about personal brand today that's different than it was 5 or 10 years ago? And maybe I'll give a little bit of my own perspective, because you and I were talking about this last night, and I'm just so fascinated with kind of the shift that's happened over the last 5 to 10 years. And we were talking about the fact that clearly, if you are in the job market, personal brand is extremely important. And typically personal brand is tied to, how do I get the next job? How do I find the next opportunity? But today, more than ever, we're realizing that personal brand exists not just in the open job marketplace, but also within organizations. And people are investing more and more in terms of the way that they are developing perspective and value and their own identity, even within some of the most large organizations. Are you starting to see, more and more people focus on personal brand? And I guess the most important question would be, are people more willing to have their own unique identity and presence within larger organizations?
Yeah, I think it's a natural progression of the way internet is going, right? To give an example myself, right? I feel like, I work for OP, and I have my own digital brand online on all, social media outlets. And, when I think about candidates and professionals and what is their trajectory in their career, it's important that they are leveraging this idea that, they have their own identity in an organization. But imagine if you take your own identity in that organization and you put it on social media, where you can have maybe potentially thousands, if not millions of people, even eventually knowing who you are, your brand, your thought leadership. Yeah. All of a sudden you have more access and you have more people who know who you are. And when I think about candidates that are interviewing for different positions and maybe challenged with finding a new job, oftentimes they think, okay, well, they need their resume only, but having your resume is only a small portion to the actual job search and actually the trajectory of your career. Yeah. Oftentimes networking and branding allows for better networking. I moved up pretty quickly in my last positions in last companies I worked for, because I was constantly networking with other individuals in those organizations. And I made sure they knew who I was and the value that I thought that I brought to the table. And I also very quickly understood what they were needing, to meet their initiatives. And I found a way to add more value. And if you can use social media to first understand what companies are needing, what maybe even your internal company might be needing from a strategy perspective. And if you can start to build your skill set to match that need and use social media, build a digital brand to prove your validity, well, all of a sudden your trajectory in your career could probably increase pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, and organizations today more than ever are valuing, employee identity, employee independence, employee beliefs, and social stance and awareness. And so, today, again, more than ever, I think we have the opportunity to have our own identity within organizations. I go back to even just 15 years ago. I'm dating myself. 15 years ago ish. Upon graduating college, it was all about joining a large organization and immediately drinking as much Kool-Aid as you possibly could. And, this is gonna, I think this is also gonna just speak to maybe the complete nerd in me. But when I graduated and I took my first position with Pfizer, which, is a large pharmaceutical company, there were, 10,000 sales reps across the United States. My training class was 600 plus people. And, they had a really, really unique approach about bringing employees in, really evangelizing, Pfizer and the Pfizer way and the way that they worked, with the community and customers. And they really wanted you almost to take on a very specific skill set and almost identity that was supported and fit within kind of the broader brand of Pfizer. So much so that I came home from a summer of training in New York, and I took the Pfizer business card and I matched the blue that was in the Pfizer logo to a gallon of paint, and I painted my home office in Pfizer blue. And if you ever seen the Pfizer logo, it's a like primary royal blue. Like, it's not a paint that you would want to put on your walls. But that was, again, that was the employee experience, is that you came in and you developed this deep, deep belief in the organization, and you almost took on that, the brand guidelines of the organization. And here we are now, again, less than 20 years later. And I believe that even in the largest organizations, you not only have the ability to establish your independence and your own unique perspective, but companies like Pfizer are valuing that more today than they ever have before. Is that your experience in working with organizations large and small?
I would say it depends on the company, and it depends on how regulated they are, right? There are some companies like some very large enterprise level law firms. No, your presence online has to match exactly what it's like walking into the office. But then there's also some companies that are maybe grounded in more creative, the creatives where they prefer to hire. It's more of a culture thing. They prefer to hire someone that has their own identity outside of work, because those tend to be candidate or employees that are more engaged in life, right? If they have extracurricular hobbies and they have passion projects, those, there are companies that prefer that, like Google and Facebook, right? These are two primary companies. They prefer to hire people that, you go onto their Instagram, or you go onto their social media accounts, and they've got their own personal brand. They want that. So I see it shifting even more so. I don't know if highly regulated organizations would ever shift, honestly. But I think that there is a separation in brand, like, your identity being connected to your company, and your identity just who you are.
I love that. Okay, let's get into some of the tactics, because I just know, in following you on Instagram and the meetings that we've had, you're always full of just like really good nuggets. So, if I'm in the job market, I'm looking for a job, or maybe even if I'm not, like, what are some of the do's and don'ts of personal brand today?
Yeah. So number one, have a LinkedIn page. Have a LinkedIn page. Make sure that you are accessible. That's number one. There are so many times where, there are really quality candidates, but they're not accessible. Their phone numbers aren't available. Their email addresses are not available. Their last names are kind of hidden on social media, so no one really knows who they are, what they're about. That's number one. Number two, I would say it's incredibly important to start producing content that's consistent and educational based, that is related to whatever your subject matter expertise is. And also, there's a lot of people that I talk to that think, I don't have a subject matter expertise. What am I good at? But you have to really believe and know that everyone is good at something. And whatever it is that you're really good at, you can start to speak to that more often on social media, any social media really. But in this case, I would say LinkedIn. All of a sudden, you'll start to build a quality brand around that expertise, and people will start to know you as well.
All right, I got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Because I want to stay on this content piece. Like, why in less than 5 years have has LinkedIn moved from, static celebrations of people's work anniversary and every once in a while, like an inspirational quote or two, to like full blown people are posting TikTok videos on LinkedIn. So I guess my question is, and that's great because content is king. And I think people getting creative with the way that they deploy content is amazing. I'm a huge proponent of it. But are there certain kind of parameters or restrictions that you work with your clients on that allow them to potentially not get overexposed or potentially portray a message that they're not trying to portray?
Yeah, that's a question. I mean, honesty is always the right way, right? You never want to portray yourself other than who you actually are, right? We don't recommend for clients, or at least I would never recommend to a client to, well, actually maybe some clients would want to be like this. But some people find a lot of, they'll find a lot of attraction on social media when they find someone who's kind of going against the grain and saying things on social media that are probably, not kosher. I don't recommend clients do that, but there are some individuals that prefer to do that just so they can have more eyeballs on their brand, right? Gary Vee is an example of that, right? Some of the things he says, even Brad Lee as a prime example, some of the things Brad Lee says on social media might have you pause here and there, but everyone, a lot of people know his name. A lot of people know the Gary Vee brand because he's so certain about what he's speaking about, and he doesn't really care about any parameters. He just speaks from the gut, off the cuff, and it's his authentic voice. So I think having an authentic voice with branding is critical. But again, it depends on your clients, and it depends on how your clients might respond. Right? Yep. You don't want to a lot of your buyers, I would say. Yeah. But
how important is the resume today?
So the national response rate for job application tracking systems is only 3%. So what that means is even if you apply to a position with your resume, 3% of the time are you actually getting response backs. So is your resume important? Do you need one? Yes, but it's only a small part of the full package of how you're representing yourself throughout the interview process and getting a job.
And are most organizations doing what we're doing, which is like we immediately go to their LinkedIn profile?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the stat. Actually, I don't remember the stat right now, but absolutely. I mean, companies go online to check out candidates faster than. I mean, the average time it takes a recruiter to look at a resume is 7 seconds. So they're spending 7 seconds on resume, but online they're spending a whole lot more time. So yes.
And when you say, online, are organizations going beyond the LinkedIn profile? Like, are they going the extra step to, check out their Facebook feed and Instagram and things of that nature? Like how big of a part of that is in today's process?
I think it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
There's certain websites that you can go on and you put in someone's name and you see all sorts of information, right? There's nothing that's hidden online. And, when a company is looking to hire someone who's congruent, who's honest, who, has a track record of being, someone that they can depend on, yes, they are going to go online, right? And, the worst for candidates is to have, let's say, a Facebook account or an Instagram account that is nothing like who they actually are in business, right? That incongruency can kind of feel a little untrustworthy for some hiring, right? So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. We have another question that's coming through from the Zoom Q&A. Given the current dynamics situation, a slight scale back in the job market and cash-strapped companies, what advice would you have for people looking to tee up their next career move, more specifically in the management consulting space? That's an interesting question. I'm happy to take the management consulting part of it, but I'm just curious as to maybe the question here is, how can we best position ourselves in what seems to be a tighter job market?
Sure. For candidates that are looking to tee up for their next career move, it's important that you have a digital brand, right? You want to make sure that people know exactly who you are, what your niche is, and how you can add value to an organization. In order to do that, you have to know the nature of the market and where the market is moving, and you need to adjust your skill sets and make sure people know who you are. So leveraging social media, leveraging LinkedIn, especially, that's what I would certainly encourage you to do, as well as begin to network, right? It's absolutely appropriate to start reaching out to C-suites, reach out to other leaders and let them know that you're interested in their company. You might not have, you don't have to say that you're looking to leave today, right? Because maybe you're happy at your company. That's the goal. You don't want to leave your company, but let's say in 5 years, you want to already have had a relationship built with all of these companies that are likely in management consulting. So by the time you are looking, they know who you are. They've seen you enough times on social media, and they see you as a thought leader in a specific space, and grow that network.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add, because the question asks about specifically the management consulting space. We've obviously been in the recruiting and hiring process here for the last year. I think one of the things that's really interesting that allows certain candidates to stand out is the ability to show work early. The ability to put forward a perspective or a piece of work that supports, but is outside of, the bullets on your resume, the sections in your LinkedIn, and the words that, come out of your mouth in an interview. So work product, I think, has been a real differentiator. And we've actually baked that into our interview process where, in most cases, we will ask candidates, particularly those who are interviewing for our consulting positions, to submit a piece of work product. And it's so interesting because we get like one of two extremes. We get people who are just totally not into it and really struggle with the request. And we get people who are like just absolutely ready and willing. I think the ones that have differentiated are those that have found ways to proactively put forward a piece of work or a perspective that supports what we do here at Thoughtium. And I'll give a perfect example of this. We recently had a candidate who we ultimately hired. And the challenge for her coming into the final round was to submit a piece of work that showed her skills in designing and developing learning experiences. That was a big part of the role. And she submitted a recording of her facilitating a piece of training. So it was not just, I'm going to take you through my design process and I'm going to show you the slides that support this workshop that I developed, but I'm also going to send you a piece of multimedia that shows, the way that I show up in front of what could be your clients, and my facilitation skills and my personality and my energy in an open room. It actually was a virtual facilitation, so it also demonstrated her ability to kind of facilitate virtually. And I'll never forget it because it was such a differentiator that she, really had the confidence to show that level of specificity and work. So I guess I'll put a vote in there for, especially in consulting, to show work product, because it oftentimes is a real differentiator.
Absolutely. I love that idea. I think that's brilliant of her to have done that. Something that I encourage candidates to do is create something called a brag book. So a brag book is essentially a folder, or you can even print out your materials and put it together as a booklet. But it's essentially a place where you have any exceptional wins, your resume, your LinkedIn printouts, anytime a client or colleague gave you kudos, anytime you've actually helped someone or made impact in your organization for other people, document it. Start to document all of your successes. That way, by the time you are ready to look for a job, you have something that is differentiating you physically, where you can say, hey, this is the impact I've been making to my company, and this is how I think I will then also impact your company, right? And doing something on, that's brilliant, right? I've known who make like a 30-second to 1 minute video explaining who they are and what they do. And they'll go out and they'll just go ahead and send it to all of these C-suites
awesome.
on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Apps that you can do to do that.
Yeah. Well, I know, for example, we're working with your organization, Objective Paradigm, to develop the kind of recruiting version of that. So we're going to be putting together employee experience videos that represent not just, our people, but what we do here at Thoughtium, which I think is going to be an incredible tactic as well, too. Before we wrap up, I almost want to touch on one other topic, because as we talk about personal brand, we maybe talked about the differences between yesterday and today. And this might be a little bit of a curveball question, so like no right answer, but what's the future of personal brand? Where are we headed, as professionals? If the acceleration has been so much so that in the last 5 years, we went from, paper resumes attached to an email to, by the way, you also see TikTok videos on the LinkedIn feed. If that's the acceleration that we're going through, where do we see, personal brand in another 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the relationship to it will shift. I think, the individuals that have more influence over the masses, right? And you can actually track that on social media. Those are the ones that will be seen more often. And the ones that are seen more often might be looked at by default as leaders, right? Because it's branding. It's like when you're selling a product, right? Advertising, typically advertising plus true value add and care wins. So if you can also portray yourself as in that same way, I think that's how people will eventually know whether or not one candidate is better than the other.
Yeah.
They'll look at that as a signifier for sure.
Yeah, and it's almost going back to something we talked about earlier. I think that personal brand is heading in a direction where people will be able to develop even a deeper sense of their own identity, and they'll be able to carry that wherever they go. I also think that organizations, both large and small, are going to be more inviting of folks that have different things going on. As kind of the freelance economy picks up, and as the kind of millennial generation enters, the bulk of the employee force, you've got people that have a lot of different interests. You've got people that, want to be invested in different things. And you've got people that have experience in leveraging their outside interests or their side hustles or their side jobs to augment and support the organization that they're working for, which I think is really cool. Because again, back in the day, you joined an organization, you drank the Kool-Aid, and nobody within your organization heard about, your interests outside of those walls, or even, ventures that you might be working on. And particularly on the West Coast in the startup space, and it's making its way into more, corporate America, that type of well-roundedness, that type of multi-dimension is, I think, really being accepted. And those people then that are taking advantage of that and are clearly articulating that they have multiple interests and that they have multiple skill sets are almost, differentiated as opposed to set aside.
Because it means that you are searching for something in life,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
More engaged in candidates that are more engaged in life will be more engaged and have different perspectives and different skill sets to offer to an organization as well.
Totally.
And different now.
Tell us a little bit about how you work with folks. We work directly with you and OP. You guys just do some incredible work with both, small and large organizations to help them realize the benefit of talent acquisition strategy. Tell us a little bit about, how you work with individuals. I want to learn a little bit more about Career Design Lab, because I know that's a really exciting project that you've got going on. So tell us a little bit about, how you work with folks today.
Sure. So with Objective Paradigm, so I personally work directly with decision makers and C-suites, me personally, and working within the team of, initially understanding what they're looking for. And we have a robust delivery team that will, help them identify and make recommendations on what they need to help their talent acquisition practices increase on some level. And we have different solutions to support that. If you guys have any questions about talent acquisition, or even if you want a simple and easy conversation about talent acquisition, you guys can always reach out to me directly. And then on the Career Design Lab side, I'm in the middle of creating a course for job seekers to learn how to navigate the job search process and hopefully get hired by companies that they love. So that's been really exciting. It's been a long project that I've been working on, but I'm really excited to give the information that I've developed over the last decade, and really teaching candidates what it takes to actually get hired. I've been privileged to work with some of really important and exciting companies, and really understanding what it takes to get hired, what kind of questions they're asking. So being able to share that information with candidates soon would be amazing.
That's awesome.
So
It's super exciting. I also want to give a big shout out to Mike Bailey. So Mike is also part of Objective Paradigm. This is a classic example of how you work with organizations. So Mike essentially came on board and has worked directly with us on a day-to-day basis over the course of the last 6 to 8 months as we've gone through our growth and change. And he has and is one of us. I mean, he's got a Thoughtium email address, and he's got a presence on LinkedIn. And, he supports us in a lot of different ways, not just bringing great candidates to the table, but also in then developing those processes and the strategy that, we're going to use to take Thoughtium to the next level. And again, that is different than the way that we would work with a traditional recruiting or talent acquisition company, in that, that's more of like a headhunter model, where again, you bring a specific role or job description or opening to an organization. They do their best job to fill it. They then take a percentage of that as their commission. Mike and Objective Paradigms have really been alongside of us in a tremendous amount of growth and change for us. And the value that we've got from Mike, outside of just his incredible good looks and smile, has been really, really driving growth and strategy that will pay dividends and yields for us for years to come. So big shout out to Mike Bailey. I know he's in the Zoom room today. So thank you for everything that you do, Mike. Sasha, how can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so go ahead. You guys can email me at szayed at oprecruiting.com, or just add me on LinkedIn. You guys can just go ahead, add me on LinkedIn right now, Sasha, last name Zayed. And I'd be happy to connect and jump on a phone and just answer any questions that you might have. And one point to what Anthony just said about Mike Bailey, about Mike, is, there's tremendous value having a talent acquisition resource in-house who's really feeling what it feels like for your company and understanding the nuances, because they're able to represent your company more effectively because of that. So I think that's another benefit.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Definitely reach out to Sasha. I would also suggest following her on Instagram if you can. Her Instagram stories are chock full of just incredible day-to-day tips on how to navigate your career and develop your personal brand. I want to thank you, Sasha, for joining us at the table today. I knew this conversation was going to be super robust. I was taking a few notes, so I definitely got some nuggets, and hopefully our audience did as well too. So again, thank you so much for joining the discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. We are here live every Thursday at 3:00. As you can see here, we've got a few more this month of just leaders from different industries talking about topics that matter most today. And we're thrilled to have Brad Kolar next week talking a little bit about what we call the decision-driven organization, which is how do we leverage data in a way that makes us really grow and prosper as an organization across all functions. We hear this term big data, and next week we're really going to unpack that and make it real for everybody. He is one of several leaders that we're going to have at the table throughout the rest of September. As I mentioned before, we will be here live at 3 o'clock Central. You can find all of our programming at thoughtium.com/live, and you can register to join these sessions for free. So again, Sasha, thank you. And we hope everybody has a good rest of the afternoon. So long.
Bye, everyone.